Hello and welcome back to the MCR. My name is Matt, and with me this morning is TJ. The others are off doing whatever they're off doing, so it's just the two of us for these few videos. I happened across a video, and it was Officer Brandon Tatum's show, and he had the title on the thumbnail was "Joe Rogan says the N-word," and his little, he was like it was a thing.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So when he gets into it, he's got a picture or a video of Joe Rogan apologizing for using the N-word, and it wasn't like he was calling. And Tatum points this out. He wasn't calling anyone that. He was referencing and quoting other people who had said it in a variety of ways. And someone, someone who hates Joe Rogan, because he won't go along with the pandemic as they want him to, got a compilation of these videos and they put them together. And according to Joe, I have not seen this, but according to Joe Rogan, it makes him look really bad. So he goes into this, how terrible it is that word is, and how that word is a word that he's not, and that's where I take an issue with him. He's not allowed to say. Allowed by who? Now, there's certain things you can't say, like fire in a crowded theater, or something that will cause a clear and present danger to the general public.
Well, Mac and I watched it together, and what I found interesting was, and I believe he was making this point, that it was beyond he wasn't allowed to say it. You know what? We say he was not. We're not allowed to say it,
Yeah.
And in any context, you were not even allowed to quote someone,
A black person
saying
it, right?
We are not allowed in any manner of speech, and so I'm thinking, well, are we allowed to say, if we're not allowed to say it, then are we allowed to say the N-word? Or are we allowed to spell it? Or are we forbidden to spell it? Because it just goes off into any given direction.
Well, not that I don't use the word, but or want to for that matter. But it's almost like I have to say, tell my wife, let's go on a WALK, so the dog doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Although he's pretty smart and he catches on to that even eventually.
Yeah.
But who's allowing me to say anything other than that circumstance that I pointed out?
Yeah, who is the authority in making this allowance?
Yes.
And a few weeks back, and this kind of goes back to when I talked about Morgan Wallin. Morgan Wallin, he got in trouble for using the N-word, but he wasn't even calling a person of minority the N-word. He was using it in the context that they themselves in that culture use.
He was using it like a black person uses it.
Yeah, and so he got in trouble because he too. That's why I say we're not allowed to use it. We're not allowed to say it.
We don't want to, but the idea that the society will come crashing down or someone will die if we did say it.
But to not use it, not be allowed to use it in any context. In other words, I can't even quote how Morgan Wallin used it, or I'd be equally at fault.
You can't quote Joe Rogan's quoting someone else.
You know what?
Degree.
Yeah. I mean, that's where this all leads, most certainly.
However, with that said, the mayor of New York, Mayor Adams, can call white people or refer to white people. He wasn't calling anyone this, to be clear. But he can refer to white people as crackers, and how he kicked those crackers' ass. And he was speaking in front of a predominantly black audience, so I guess he feels it's okay to say it to them. Just like if you and I were at a Klan meeting, we might want to throw the N-word around.
I just, in kind of along this vein, one of the worst, do you call it pejoratives or something?
Yeah.
Is when they refer to a person of color who does not believe in the properly, who is of a different belief which is not deemed proper, they refer to him as a family member, Thomas. You know?
Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might as well say it.
Well, see, I didn't know if I was allowed to say it.
Well, what if we call someone an Uncle Tom? I actually have an Uncle Tom, by the way.
I just and boy, I tell you what, when one minority calls another person a minority an Uncle Tom, I feel it's a slight on me as much that person.
Yeah.
You know, and you
well,
know,
in your line of work, you have been referred to as a an N-word
female pup. We're incorporating politically correct speech here
because we don't want to get tagged by anybody.
I have had people of my, you know what, and I have been called this so many times. I couldn't even give you an accurate number. I could say 50. I could say 100. I could say 200 because it happened with such regularity. You know, and I'll use politically correct speech here. I was called a minority female pup. Okay. And if you're wondering what female pup is, the B word, okay?
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. What do you think would happen to Mike Duggan, who's the mayor of the city of Detroit, and he's a white guy, he's the first mayor in quite some time, and if he were to just said, you know, in reflecting back on something, I kicked those Negroes' ass. What the hell would he would be out on the street?
Even if he used the word Negro, he'd be out on the street.
Which is a derivative of the Latin word negra, which means black.
But, you know, it just, you know, it goes to the
double standard
the double standard, the hypocrisy. Yeah. And the funny part about it is, I'm getting side. The funny part about this is as I'm being called this name, they're not even employing proper English. You know, what, you know, NB.
Well, whenever when someone cusses me out, I do like them to use proper English.
Well,
like you said once, you're not using the Queen's English. And I said the drag queen's English in your case.
Yes, yeah. I occasionally, in my fits of sarcasm, I employ the Queen's English.
Yes, and I answered in my usual rapidity. So let's move on to another incident here recently. And let's get back to Joe just before we go on to the next thing. In this video, I lost respect for Joe Rogan because he's apologizing for something he didn't really do anything wrong. Quoting someone in context, there's nothing wrong with that. He wasn't calling anyone the name, but he apologized. And I know a lot of people are after Joe Rogan these days. You know, people want him off Spotify. People want him burned at the stake. So on. They want him to live homeless on the streets of Los Angeles. That's his punishment for saying the things he says. But what about Whoopi Goldberg? Her comments. Let's say, and I would say Ben Shapiro would be a horrible example because he's Jewish, but let's say Brandon Tatum said about Jews what Whoopi Goldberg said about Jews. He'd be run out of town. ABL, same thing. She's basically saying, so what's the big deal if they killed 6 million people? It's white-on-white crime. Who cares? So that tells you what she thinks of people in general.
Yeah, and you mentioned Whoopi Goldberg. It does appear she was on paid suspension. And the reason why they suspect that is because in announcing her punishment, they said suspension.
Yeah.
They didn't say paid suspension or unpaid suspension. They said suspension.
And when I heard suspension, I said vacation.
Yeah, it might as well be a vacation.
But they're going to pretend that we punished her when they haven't.
And because she was publicly admonished, she may quit now.
Which she's angry about. So what was her apology about then?
Yeah.
Since clearly she thinks she didn't do anything wrong and it's just white-on-white crime, so on and so forth. I don't get it. It's another of the double standards.
Yeah.
And we've said often, if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards.
Have no standards at all.
So with that, we'll call this one a day. Disappointed in Joe Rogan. He kind of pussed out, I thought. I understand he's under a lot of heat, but now is not the time to apologize to people because of their skin color. So with that, as we always say, be safe, watch your six, and don't tread on me.